This is from Arabian Nights. The story of the king and the physician. The story of the king and the physician. There was once a king who suffered from leprosy, and his physician had in vain endeavored his cure, and when an able physician named Dubin arrived at his court. Dubin was an experienced natural philosopher, fully understood the good and bad qualities of plants and drugs. As soon as he was informed of the king's distemper and understood that his physicians had given him up, he found means to present himself before the throne. "I know," said he, after the usual ceremonials, "that your majesty's physicians have not been able to heal you of the leprosy, but if you will accept my service, I will engage to cure you without potions or external applications." External applications. The king answered, "If you're able to perform what you promise, I will enrich you and your posterity." "You may make the trial." The physician returned to his quarters, made a hollow mace, and in the handle he put drugs. He made also a ball, in such a manner as suited his purpose, with which next morning he presented himself before the king, and said to him, "Let your majesty take horse and exercise yourself with this mace, and strike the ball until you find your hands and body perspire. When the medicine I have put up in the handle of the mace is heated by your hand, it will penetrate your whole body, and as soon as you perspire, you may leave off the exercise, for then the medicine will have had its effect. Immediately on your return to your palace, go into the bath, and cause yourself to be well washed and rubbed. Then retire to bed, and when you rise tomorrow, you will find yourself cured." The king took the mace, struck the ball, which was returned by his officers who played with him. He played so long that his hands and his whole body were in a sweat, and then the medicine shut up in the handle of the mace operated as the physician had said. Thereupon the king left off play, returned to his palace, entered the bath, observed very exactly what his physician had prescribed to him. The next morning when the king arose, he perceived with equal wonder and joy that his leprosy was cured. His leprosy was cured, and his body as clean as if it had never been affected. As soon as he was dressed, he came into the hall of audience where he ascended his throne and showed himself to his courtiers. They, eager to know the success of the new medicine, gathered round the throne. And when they saw the king perfectly cured, expressed great joy. The physician Dubin entered the hall. Entering the hall, bowed himself before the throne with his face to the ground. The king, perceiving him, made him sit down by his side, presented him to the assembly, and gave him all the commendation he deserved. His majesty did not stop here, but daily showered upon him marks of his esteem. Now this king had a vizier who was greedy. This king had a vizier who was very greedy and envious, and naturally capable of every kind of mischief. He could not behold without envy the presents that were given to the physician, and he therefore resolved to lessen him in the king's esteem. "Sire," said he to the king, "are you wise in allowing about your person a man who, for aught you know, may have been sent here by your enemies to attempt your life?" No, vizier," interrupted the king. "I am certain that this physician, whom you suspect of being a villain and a traitor, is one of the best and most virtuous of men. You know, he cured me of my leprosy. If he had had a design upon my life, why did he save me then? He needed only to have left me to my disease. I perceive it to be his virtue that raises your envy. But do not think I will be prejudiced against him. He has cured you, you say, but alas, who can assure you of that? Who knows but the medicine he has given you may in time have pernicious effects?" The king was not able to discover the wicked design of his vizier, nor had he firmness enough to persist in his first opinion. This discourse staggered him. "Vizier," he said, "thou art in the right. The stranger may be come on purpose to take away my life, when he may easily do by his drugs. When he had spoken thus, he called for one of his officers, and ordered him to go for the physician, who, knowing nothing of the king's purpose, came to the palace in haste. Knowest thou, said the king, when he saw him, why I sent for thee? No, sire, answered he, I wait till your majesty be pleased to inform me. I sent for thee, replied the king, to rid myself of thee by taking away thy life. No man can express the surprise of the physician when he heard these words. Sire, said he, why would your majesty take my life? What crime have I committed? I am informed, replied the king, that you came to my court only to attempt my life, but to prevent you, I will be sure of yours. Give the blow, he said to the executioner, who was present, and deliver me from a perfidious wretch. Deliver me from a perfidious wretch who came hither on purpose to assassinate me. When the physician heard this cruel order, he readily judged that the honors and presents he had received from the king had procured him enemies, and that the weak prince had been imposed on. He repented that he had cured the leper of his leprosy, but it is now too late. It is thus, asked the physician, that you reward me for curing you? Alas, sire, cried he, prolong my days, and God will prolong yours. Do not put me to death, lest God treat you in the same manner. The king cruelly replied, No, I must of necessity cut you off, otherwise you may assassinate with as much art as you cured me. The physician, without bewailing his fate for being so ill rewarded by the king, prepared for death. The executioner tied his hands and was going to draw his scimitar when the physician addressed himself once more to the king. Sire, said he, since your majesty will not revoke the sentence of death, I beg at least that you would give me leave to return to my house, to give orders about my burial, to bid farewell to my family, to give alms, and to bequeath my books to those who are capable of making good use of them. I have one particularly I would present to your majesty. It is a very precious book, worthy of being laid up carefully in your treasury. What is it? Demanded the king. That makes it so valuable. Sire, replied the physician, it possesses many singular and curious properties, of which the chief is that if your majesty will give yourself the trouble to open it at the 6th leaf and read the 3rd line of the left page, my head, after being cut off, will answer all the questions you ask of it. The king, being curious, deferred his death till the next day and sent him home under a strong guard. The physician during that time put his affairs in order. Meanwhile, a report being spread that an unheard of miracle was about to happen after his death, the viziers, the emirs, officers of the guard, and in a word, the whole court repaired next day to the hall of audience that they might be witness of it. The physician Dubin was brought in, and advancing to the foot of the throne with the book in his hand, he called for a basin, and laid upon it the cover in which the book was wrapped. Then presenting the book to the king, he said, Take this, and after my head is cut off, order that it be put into the basin upon that cover. As soon as it is placed there, the blood will stop flowing. Then open the book, and my head will answer your questions. But permit me once more to implore your majesty's clemency. I protest to you that I am innocent. Your prayers, answered the king, are in vain, and were it for nothing but to hear your head speak after your death, it is my will you should die. After he said this, he took the book out of the physician's hands and ordered the executioner to do his duty. The head was so dexterously cut off that it fell into the basin, and was no sooner laid upon the cover of the book than the blood stopped flowing. Then, to the great surprise of the king and all the spectators, it opened its eyes and said, Sire, will your majesty be pleased to open the book? The king proceeded to do so, but finding that the leaves adhered to each other, in order that he might turn them with more ease, he put his finger to his mouth and wetted it. He did this till he came to the 6th leaf. Finding no writing on the place where he desired to look for it, he said, "Physician, there is nothing written here." "Turn over some more leaves," replied the head. The king went on, putting always his finger to his mouth until he found himself suddenly taken with an extraordinarily fit. His eyesight failed, and he fell down at the foot of the throne in violent convulsions. When the physician Dubin, or rather his head, saw that the poison had taken effect and that the king had but a few moments to live, it decried, "Tyrant! Now you see how princes are treated who, abusing their authority, cut off the heads of innocent men. God punishes, soon or late, their injustice and cruelty." Scarcely had the head spoken these words when the king fell down dead, and the head itself lost what life it had. As soon as the fisherman had concluded the history of the Greek king and his physician Dubin, he applied it to the genie, whom he still kept shut up in the vessel. If the king said he had suffered the physician to live, God would have continued his life also. The case is the same with you, O genie, but I'm obliged in my turn to be equally hard-hearted with you. "Hear me one word more," cried the genie. "I promise to do thee no hurt. Nay, far from that, I will show thee a way to become exceedingly rich." The hope of delivering himself from poverty prevailed with the fisherman. "I could listen to you," said he. "Were there any credit to be given to your word? Swear to me by the great name of God that you will faithfully perform what you promise, and I will open the vessel. I do not believe you will dare to break such an oath." The genie gave the fisherman his oath, upon which the fisherman immediately took off the covering of the vessel, and at once the smoke ascended, and the genie, having resumed his form, kicked the vessel into the sea. "Be not afraid, fisherman," said the genie. I only did it to see if thou wouldst be alarmed, but to convince thee that I am in earnest. Take thy nets and follow me." They passed by the town and came to the top of a mountain, from whence they descended into a vast plain, which brought them to a lake that lay betwixt 4 hills. When they reached the side of the lake, the genie said to the fisherman, "Cast in thy nets and catch fish." The fisherman did not doubt of taking some, because he saw a great number in the water, but he was extremely surprised when he found they were of 4 colors, that is to say, white, red, blue, and yellow. He threw in his nets and brought out one of each color. Having never seen the like before, he could not but admire them, and judging that he might get a considerable sum for them, he was very joyful. "Carry those fish," said the genie to him, "and present them to thy sultan. He will give thee money for them. Thou mayest come every day to fish in this lake, but I give thee warning not to throw in thy nets more than once a day. Otherwise thou wilt repent." Having thus spoken, he struck his foot upon the ground, which opened, and after it had swallowed him up, closed again. Further adventures of the fisherman and the genie coming up next.